Okay, fine. We can start now. So let me share my screen. So in the today's session, so can anyone please confirm if whether I'm audible and my screen is visible? Yes. Okay, fine. Thank you. So as in the CNN class, I have already mentioned, again, I repeat that part. So in the deep learning, you have three parts. One is tabular data. For that, we make use of ANN architecture. If we have image data, if we have image data, we make use of CNN model. Different separate models have been evolved. Like here, too many parameters. If I have image data, if I will give it to the ANN architecture, so it requires too many parameter calculation. Like as images of 28 by 28 size. So total 784 inputs and then neurons. So like that, too many parameters and multiple calculations are involved. Well, if I have image data and I am using ANN architecture, so that's why people have come up with the CNN. So just a recap of CNN, because whatever we will be learning in DDPM. So today's session is based on DDPM, diffusion model, denoising probabilistic diffusion model, DDPM. So here CNN is for this purpose we are making use of CNN architecture. So CNN is just quick recap of this: convolution plus pooling plus feed forward neural network. So this is a CNN, basically mainly used for image data and for classification of that image data. Then if we have time series related data or data that is dependent on each other, all inputs are dependent. So if you have tabular data, so here you can have like different heart disease data like that. So here hypertension and glucose, they are not dependent with each other, or age of the patient, and then hypertension. So these inputs are independent of each other. But when we have input data that is depending on each other, all inputs are dependent on each other. So for that purpose, or for time series related data, we need to make use of different kind of model, that is a RNN. So in there is a problem with RNN, that's why people have come up with the LSTM. So there is a problem of vanishing gradient, so learning stops because of this vanishing gradient problem. So because of this problem, people have come up with the LSTM, long short term memory. And then here, long short term means it has long term dependency it captures, and again it has some hidden state data that is given output to the next layer. And again on the top of it, here three gates are involved. So to reduce those gates, people have come up with the GRU architecture. Then someone has added attention mechanism here, only attention. Then people have come up with the self attention. So that is the recent state of art, self attention. So before this, you have here encoder and decoder architecture. Encoder and decoder architecture. So don't get confused with this encoder decoder architecture with autoencoder. So autoencoder is mainly used for here image data. So here these are the generative models. So whatever ANN, CNN, and RNN, LSTM, GRU. So these are the classification models. So mainly the main purpose of this model is to classify the data in different classes. So here, suppose now, so for this classification problem, again I have mentioned, if you remember, for classification model. So if I am giving image and how my model is predicting it correctly for that particular class. So to identify that, we have we need to have different kind of performance metrics. So there are different performance metrics like accuracy, then precision, recall. So all the classification models have performance metrics like classification model like ANN, CNN. So these models have performance metrics like accuracy, then precision. So again, it is calculated based on false positive, false negative, that confusion matrix, if you remember this. And then next you have precision recall, third recall. Again you may have here you may have here this one F1 square, AUC, ROC curve. So these are the basic performance metrics that are used for classification model. But whatever model, now my goal is not to classify the data. My goal is to generate new data, not classify. I need to generate new data. So to generate new data, so before traditional, so for if we now we will be working with this image side. So image side, you have classification CNN models. Then you have different models that are developed for generative generation purpose. So that now I will again create newer one. So here you have generative models now. So traditionally, if I have 500 images, and as in fundamentals of deep learning, so you might have observed my validation accuracy is not getting, after a certain number of epochs, my validation accuracy is getting decreased. That problem is called as a like overfitting problem, or there is a problem that my validation accuracy is not, my model is not performing well. So for that purpose, you need to augment the data, you need to increase your data. So to increase the data, you have to add, suppose I have 500 images. So I have to add 1,000 images. I have to make it to the 1,000 images. So to make it 1,000 images, what were the traditional techniques we make use of? There are different traditional techniques that can be used. Traditional techniques that can be used, like horizontal flip. You take the image from this 500 image and you just add horizontal flip operation from PyTorch transform function, horizontal flip. This function is available in PyTorch transform function library, transform. So from here, you make use of horizontal flip. Then what you do, you rotate the image by particular degree, rotation, 10 degree, 20 degree, like that, same image. Then third one, you can make a vertical flip operation. So rarely we make use of vertical flip because you cannot see the image vertical, like it will become completely 360-degree change. So vertical flip is rarely used. So then what you do, you add color jitter, you change the brightness of image, then you may zoom the image. So different same image you are giving your model in a different way. So in this scenario, what you are doing, you are picking up the image from this data only, originally available data, and you are applying this transformation on that image, and you are increasing your data to the 1,000 images. So these are the traditional techniques. So now people have come up with I should not use the same image from the data. I have to generate the image that is not existing, but that should look like the image from this data. So it should be different image. It should not belong to this 500 image, but it should be different image. But it should be different image. Sorry, it should be similar image, but it should not be from the same data set. As these are the images generated based on this data set itself, same images, but we are looking in a different way. But here we have to generate the image which is different, not belong to this data set, but that image should follow the structure of these kinds of image. So if it would be zero numbered image, so I need to generate some zero number image, but that zero number image should not be from this data. So new images I need to generate. For that purpose, we are making use of these generative models. So generative model, main purpose of generative model is to generate the images. To generate the images. So how you can evaluate the performance of these models now? That is the question. Like in case of classification model, as I have mentioned, in case of classification and regression model, you are using accuracy, precision, recall, like that. Those many parameters you are using. F1 square, so, different performance metrics you are using. But for this generative model, so what are the performance metrics that you can use? So there are different performance metrics. So here, how my model is correctly classifying the image given data in a particular class. So that is what performance is. And you have to measure that 95, I am 90 9% confident that my model, whatever data it will give, I am 99% sure that that model is giving me the correct answer. If the data is for heart disease, it is giving me the heart disease answer. Only 1% chance is there, so it is giving me the wrong answer. So this is how you are calculating the performance of this metric. But in case of generative model, how you will analyze these models or calculate the performance? So that is so what you will do, you are actually generating here image. Main purpose is generating image. So you are taking original image and you are generating newer image from this data set. So here, whatever images you are generating, you need to tell that my generative model is correctly generating the images. So that should be your answer to measure the performance. So how you will evaluate that? So for that purpose, there are different evaluation metrics. So I can say that there is a FID score. So whatever image you are generating, zero numbered image, that image should be very, very much closer. The distance between original image of zero numbered and your generated image of zero number, their distance should be very, very less. So that is a Frechet distance matrix. Then again you have SSIM ratio, similarity measure. Then third you have here PSNR ratio, again based on the formula for generated image and how it follows the distribution. It should follow the diversity, it should capture the diversity of your complete data distribution. So like that, based on this you have these kinds of performance metrics. So whenever you are generating the image with the generative models, so you have to make use of this evaluation matrix, FID score, then SSIM similarity measure, then here PSNR ratio, then you have here inception score. So these are the different images. Again, you can perform the t-SNE analysis on this, like how my data following the distribution. Like for two clusters, my clusters are getting there is no overlapping in the class distribution. Like for one class, another class, there should be the separation in the different classes. So in that way, you can evaluate the performance of your generative model. So now question is, what are the different generative models? So as you have already seen, there is one model, autoencoder. So it can be used to generate the data. Its main purpose is to compress the data or denoise the image. The next one is so there were problem with the autoencoder. That's why people have come up with the variational autoencoder. Then GAN was developed in 2014 by Goodfellow, and nowadays recently in 20 people have come up with the most important state of art technique that is called as a diffusion model. Diffusion model. So these are all the generative models, I can say, for image side. So this is autoencoder, and for text side there is an encoder decoder architecture. If you see your transformer architecture, there is an encoder and decoder architecture. This is different from this autoencoder. So is autoencoder main purpose is to compress the data or to generate the data. Again, variational autoencoder is used for the same purpose. Then in 2014 GAN has come. It was developed by Goodfellow. So again, it has two neural network. So all these architecture are based on neural network. That is the main basic fundamental unit that is used in all these architecture, that is a neural network. So again here in case of GAN you have two networks. So you are already aware about this GAN architecture. There is a generator and there is a discriminator, and now you have here diffusion model. So diffusion model is making use of this noise technique, adding noise and removing the noise from the image. So if your model is able to learn that removing noise, then from noise you can generate the image that we will see in the today's session. So I hope it's clear. So the topic for today's session is a generative model. So there are different performance metrics. Those are related with the generative model. So these are the different performance metrics. So you can evaluate the performance of your generative model with these metrics. And there are different different models like autoencoder is there, variational autoencoder is there, then GAN is there, and nowadays we are using diffusion model. So this is a state of art techniques to generate the images. So I can say here so here physical AI is coming into picture nowadays. So in that physical AI, so what is physical AI? Can anyone tell me what is physical AI? If you have heard about this, like metaverse is there, and then physical AI on the top of it, physical AI. So actually, what is this? Like if I am developing my autonomous driving car, so my car should be exposed with the, if I am directly deploying that car to the direct environment, production environment. So there is a possibility of problem. So what I can do now, I can expose my car in a simulation environment to the different kinds of environments, like if weather will change, whether is there any season, there are different kinds of obstacle. So I am generating the different scenarios, and I am exposing my car to that scenarios rather than directly deploying that car to the production environment, production. So what I will do, I will create the simulation environment, I will create the different scenes for that car, so that my model will learn these different scenarios like obstacle and all, rainy season and all. And then once my car is fully trained, then I will deploy that car to the proper production. So this is how physical AI is. So whatever scenes and whatever data you are generating here, so for that purpose diffusion model is the base. So this is how diffusion model is used nowadays. So now we will actually go into this diffusion model, how it has come and now where it is. So the main idea for diffusion model has come from the unit architecture. So we will now go through the slides and we will try to understand the things behind this architecture. So basically, what is generative AI? So generative AI, what it does, it enables the users to quickly generate new content based on variety of inputs. So inputs and outputs to these models can include. So what you are generating, so it is generating new content based on input. So what are these input and outputs? It may be text, you may generate the text, you may generate the images, sounds, animation, different 3D models, and other types of data. So here, generative AI model use neural network. As I have mentioned, the base of this is you are training your network, so that if you are giving some dummy sample to your network, that network should give you the useful image from that particular data set. So basically we are making our neural network to follow particular distribution. So whatever data is there, so I have to generate new image that follows the distribution of this data. So it should be different image from this data set, but it should look like the image from this data set. So that is my goal here in the generative AI. So one of the breakthroughs with the generative AI model is the ability to leverage different learning approaches, including unsupervised and semi-supervised learning. So it is a unsupervised problem. So here, quality. So how you will evaluate that? So here, so how you can say that my model is good? So your quality should be good. You have to, especially you have to generate the high quality images or high quality text data, especially for application that interact directly with the user. Directly with the users, having high quality generation output is a key. So for example, in speech generation, poor speech quality is difficult to understand. So that's why you should have high quality data to be generated out of this generative AI models. So then diversity. So what is this diversity? A good generative model, so that should capture the minority modes in its data distribution without sacrificing the generation quality. So it has to compulsory follow the diversity or diverse features from the data and data distribution. So this helps reduce the undesired biases in the learn model. And speed, as this is the very important task, many interactive applications require faster generation because you are creating something new here. So again, in generative model, you have to train the model. So you have here neural network architecture. So you have to make this neural network architecture to learn this data set distribution. So I have 500 images, so I need to train this neural network architecture to learn these 500 images and its data distribution of each category of images. So that again, so here in case of generative model, training takes a lot of time. So, and generation will be easier one. A fraction of second, it will generate, give you the new image. But training on this data for this neural network, it is a time consuming task. So many interactive applications require faster generation, such as a real-time image editing, to allow the use in content creation workflows. So the first architecture that has come was an autoencoder. So you may have already seen this, but quickly I will take the recap of this, because how it has evolved and now where we are. So that's why I have created slides in that way. So autoencoder is used to learn the efficient embeddings of unlabeled data, that is as I have mentioned, unsupervised problem. So it is, you are just exposing model to the data where labels are not provided, and your model is only learning that distribution of data. So here it learns the efficient embeddings of unlabeled data for a given network configuration. So the autoencoder, what autoencoder has, it has two architectures here. So one is an encoder. So here it is different. In here encoder is a making use of CNN architecture, and if we have text data, so it is making use of RNN structure or some self attention model or neural network architecture. So that is the scenario here. In encoder, it is again, there are two parts here: autoencoder, variational autoencoder, then GAN, again then in a diffusion model. There it is divided in two parts. So what is the part? One is a encoder part, another one is a decoder part. So the encoder, what is the purpose of encoder? Take the high dimensional data and convert it into the low dimensional space. So that low dimensional space is called as a latent space. So while the decoder, so what decoder will do? Take the high dimensional data, convert it in a low dimensional data, and take that low dimensional data. It does the opposite. Convert that latent space back to the high dimensional data. So you compress the data and then you decompress the data. So that is what you are doing in an autoencoder. You are taking high dimensional data, you are converting that data in a low dimensional, and then you are getting your data back. So this is a compression, this is a decompression. So your original image you are providing, you are getting back your image. So here the decoder is used to ensure that this latent space, so this is called as a latent space, can capture most of the information from the data space. So you are providing here your images from the data. So this latent space, this is very, very important. This latent space, it has to capture this data space information, most of the information from the data space, by forcing it to output what was fed as an input to the decoder. Now this is the basic architecture. So you are providing here input image, you are generating here some reconstruction of that, you are reconstructing that image. So this is a neural network architecture. Here no more number of neurons, less number of neurons, like that. You are taking this image data or any data and you are converting it in a latent space, lower dimension. So this is a latent vector. So actually what you are doing, whatever data you are taking, you are representing data in a form of some latent vector. That is what I can conclude from this. So whatever your 784 pixels are there for image, you are representing that with a different value in one array, in one vector. So it is a column vector. So here you are representing that in a latent space. And now whatever latent space is there, so you are taking that data and you are giving it to again neural network, and that neural network is reconstructing, trying to reconstruct that image. So if you are so what is your loss? Again, I have told you, like forward propagation and backward propagation. So if calculate the loss and then you back propagate, so again you need here loss. So what would be your loss? So what is your main goal? Whatever images you are reconstructing, that should match with the original image, compulsory. So this is how the loss function is defined. So what is loss function? Your original image and your reconstructed image. So if your model is able to construct properly whatever image you have given as an input, so that means your model is perfectly trained for compressing the data. So it should be minimal. This loss should be minimal. So this is how autoencoder. So if you denoise this, if you are giving, you are taking the image. Now I will tell you how it is performing, used for denoising purpose. So you are taking the image, you are adding noise to that image. So you are making this image noisy, and from that noisy image you are generating the original image. So what actually you are doing, your loss is like original image, you are comparing your reconstructed image with the original image. So that is based on that, your main goal is to construct the original image. So this is how your model is trying to denoise the image. Just carefully try to understand this core idea, because that is mainly used in a diffusion model. So you are taking original image, you are adding noise to that image, and you are making your this architecture neural network to learn, so that whatever decoder is generating or reconstructing that image should match with the original image. So ultimately you are trying to remove the noise from this image. So your model or your neural network is trying to remove the noise. So what will happen now? I will provide the noise to my image. As my neural network has learned to remove the noise component and construct something new. Because here you have trained to denoise the image, which look like, after removing the noise, it should look like something from the input. So you are taking the noise image. So that's why whenever you are trying to give the noise to the image, noise to the model, then what your model will do, it will try to remove the noise contents. So what you will be left with, you will be left with the some kind of image that will look like the data from your input images, from your data set. So this is how your autoencoder is basically used for generation purpose. So the loss function. So now we will see next. So now what will happen in this autoencoder? So whatever autoencoder, as I have mentioned, you are taking the image, you are representing in this vector form. Second image in this vector form. Directly you are representing the image in a vector form. So there is no learning involved here. In this latent space, no semantic meaning is not captured here. So what it is, the values are random and have no meaning. So a vector of numbers compressed representation that the decoder can use to reconstruct the original input as closely as possible. So this is the purpose of this encoder. So here what will happen now? So if you see here tomato, the zebra, and this for some vegetable or some flower kind of image, they have put together, because only we are representing in a vector form, zebra in a vector form. So there is no like such thing ki we are putting all fruits in a one basket, then all animals in a one basket, nothing. No semantic meaning captured from the image. So the code learned by the model makes no sense. That is, the model can just assign any vector to the inputs without the numbers in the vector representing any pattern. So you are not learning any pattern, just assigning numbers, random numbers. So the model does not capture any semantic relationship between the data. So this is what your autoencoder is there. So if I will try to see the latent space of this autoencoder. So if you see here, there is overlapping. So this is a latent space, right? So what is my goal now? Decoder, my decoder will take the data from here and generate the reconstruct the input. If you take the data from this overlapping area, then what you will have, you will not be able to generate the proper image. So suppose this is for MNIST data set. So if you will take the if your decoder will take the data from here, this latent space, this part, this cluster. So there is a possibility that this cluster will belong to the 0 category. This cluster will belong to the 9 category. This cluster will belong to the 7 category. But if you observe here, there is a overlapping. So no cluster form here. So if I will take the data from this and if I will try to reconstruct, so that image would be the garbage image. It will not fall from 0 to 9 category digits. So this is the problem with the autoencoder, because there was no semantic meaning captured during the encoding part or in the latent space. So this is below. So this is the example of latent space of autoencoder. So the same digits. So what it says, the same digits tend to cluster themselves in the latent space. So there are parts of the latent space. There are parts of this latent space that does not belong to correspond to any data point. So using those as the inputs to the encoder, it will result in an output that does not look like any digit from the MNIST data set. So this overlapping part will give you the garbage image. So these regions do not belong to any cluster. They will generate the garbage image. So the latent space is not regularized. A latent space can only has few regions that has generative capability. But here from here, there is a generate capability for this and for this side. So the entire latent space does not have generative capability. So now this is the problem with the autoencoders, because we are only taking the data and we are converting that data in a number form. So rather than randomly giving number, can I learn the distribution of the images? So that is the next part, that is a variational autoencoder. So rather than only giving vector, the encoder in the autoencoder outputs, so just output the latent vectors, right? Just random numbers. So instead of outputting the vectors in the latent space, the encoder of variational autoencoder outputs the parameters of predefined distribution. So what is the meaning of this? This is a predefined distribution. So for distribution, what are the parameters? Mu and sigma. So what VAE will do, rather than giving you the random vector, so it will give you the output as a parameters. So parameters of a predefined distribution in the latent space for every input. So VAE then imposes a constraint on this latent distribution, forcing it to be the normal distribution. Again, we are trying to follow the normal distribution for that latent space. So this constraint makes sure that the latent space is again regularized one. So this is how if you will follow that strategy rather than giving direct vectors, so you are trying to learn the distribution of the images, so mu and sigma. So there is a distribution for this, so it falls under a food category. There is a animal category, there is a vehicle category, there is some nature or scene category. So like that you have here for different categories different distribution. So you are here from, instead of vector, you are giving output as a parameter. Your latent space would be the parameter for particular distribution. So that is the main change from autoencoder to the variational autoencoder. So the variational autoencoder, again here, so loss will be changed now, right? Because previously in autoencoder directly decompression, so loss function was whatever your reconstructed image, you are subtracting it from the original image, and accordingly you are trying to make the your architecture to learn and adjust the parameters. But here you have added something called distribution. So you need to have some loss function, you need to add some parameter or some component in the loss function that is related to the distribution. So what is that component? Just a second, hold on. So here, so this is how we are making it to learn. And we are adding one extra component in the loss function that is related to the distribution. So this is what this is called as a KL divergence. So what we are trying to do, whatever this latent space is there, we are trying to make that latent space closer to your normal distribution, standard normal distribution. So KL divergence is the difference between your latent space distribution and whatever is your standard distribution, normal distribution. Standard normal distribution, what it is? Zero mu and unit variance. So that is what standard normal distribution. So your loss will become, so this is a reconstruction loss. You are matching your reconstructed image with the original image and you are subtracting and try to make the model learn. So in that way you have reconstruction loss, and in another way this one is a KL divergence. Whatever your latent space is there, you are trying to match that latent space with the distribution with the standard normal distribution. So that is a similarity loss. So your variational autoencoder has been changed to the this two losses loss function. You are adding this extra loss as we added some distribution
Yeah,
part here.
madam,
Yes.
I have a question. Is it right
Yes,
time?
sir.
Madam, in the previous
Yes, sir.
example,
Please.
in the previous example of autoencoder, when we use it for feature selection, do we use output from latent space, or how do we use the features if we have to use it for as autoencoder for feature selection?
Autoencoder for feature selection.
Yeah, for data compression like PCA, we can use it, no? Correct?
So for feature selection, sir, I need to check on that. So as it is only giving the vectors, right? Random vectors it is giving you. So directly, so maybe there will not be any learning involved, sir. Semantic things will not be captured for feature selection.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next part is this one variational. As I have mentioned, the loss has been changed to this one, the reconstruction loss and KL divergence. So we have added one extra loss with that is related with the distribution thing. And again, so this is all about your variational autoencoders. So this is how the MNIST, the same thing from this MNIST data set. So how the latent space will look like. So if you see here, there is a like less overlapping as compared to the autoencoder. So that is how it has actually the more generative capability. So this latent space, more area is having generative capability. So if you observe here previous diagram, so too many overlappings are involved here, but here less overlapping is involved in this area. So there is a possibility that if you will trying to reconstruct image from this area, it will give you the garbage output. So that is what this about variational autoencoder. So these are the key takeaways from autoencoder. So basically it is used to generate, then latent space was so generate the compressed transformation higher dimensional to the lower dimension. So latent variable is not regularized here. And then as picking up the there is a possibility of generating the random data. The next one, it has discontinuity and it is a deterministic value. As we have direct a random number, so it has some deterministic values. So it is not the stochastic one, and the latent space lacks the generative capability because of too many overlapping areas. But how it is different from VAE? So VAE is different from that. So enforces conditions on the latent variable to be in a unit normalization or standard normalization. The latent variable in the compressed form is mean and variance. So you are outputting the parameters. The latent variable is a smooth and continuous, and random value of latent variable generates the meaningful output at the decoder side. So again, it has a regularized this one latent space, and the decoder is a stochastic and it's sampled from the Gaussian and mean and variance. So you don't have any random number there. You have some mu and sigma, and based on that you have a stochastic nature. So there are not compulsory deterministic value. You cannot determine. There is a distribution. So from that distribution, you are taking the stochastic data, and the latent space has a generative capability because of less overlapping is there. So now, again, people have come up with the GAN in 2014. That good fellow, he has come up with this GAN. So nowadays, different GAN versions are there. So again, in the previous sessions, you might have already gone through this in detail. So it has a discriminative network. And again, so whatever this one, this is a discrimination network. So what we have here, so this is basically simple CNN architecture where you are only checking the image is real or fake image. And then next one you have here discrimination, you have here generative network. So what you do in a generative networks, actually why I'm telling this, because there is a simple modification in the GANs, and then we have come up with the unit architecture. So unit looks like this only, but there is a simple modification. So you have here convolution operation. You are taking the image, compressing. So like that you are not compressing, you are reducing the feature dimensions for feature map. So like that you have here real and fake discrimination. So now what you will do, you have another network, that is a generative network. So what the generative network, it will randomly taking the noise, and here you have here transpose convolution block. So this is the main core part of your unit and this diffusion model architecture, that is a transpose convolution. So what you have in transpose convolution, it is expanding the image or increasing the dimensions of image. So here in the generative, so what you will do, you will give the generated image to this classification network and your model. So both generator and discriminator, they are fighting with each other, and they are trained in an adversarial manner. So that is why this is a generative something, and they are working in adversarial manner. So this is it will try to fool this one. So what will happen? Suppose as they are opposing with each other, so at one point, the discriminator will not be able to identify whether this image, whatever image generated by the generator, this is a real image or fake image. So when your discriminator will fail to do that, so in that scenario, I can say that my discriminator is not able to identify whether image is a real or fake image. So that means the generator has successfully learned to generate the image that looks like a real image, because discriminator is not able to discriminate the class, like whether it is a real or fake. So if that would be the scenario, that means my generation is completed. Now I can whatever now noise I can give to my generator, so it should be able to give me the image. So that whatever image is generated, you will not be able to identify whether it is a real or fake, because we have already trained your discriminator on that model. So that this is how this generation will work. So now here, so instead of, so here you have here different network. If you observe here, so discriminator is a different network and generator is here a different network. So again, there is a problem with the GAN architecture. So what was that problem? That problem is called as a mode collapse. So suppose your generator and discriminator, if they are not properly trained, so there is a possibility that every time my model will generate 0 numbered image or 1 numbered image. So if it is generating images, it has to follow the diversity. But what will happen, because of some training or anything may happen with the discriminator generator, so it will give me the one category of images repeatedly. So that is the problem called as a mode collapse problem. And again, GAN is not giving that much high quality images. So that is why people have come up with the this unit architecture, and then on unit architecture they have developed this diffusion model architecture. So now we will see that. So it looks like this GAN architecture only, but here this you are creating these connections. So here you are in, this is a encoder architecture. I am giving new name here. For this part I am giving encoder architecture, and for this part generator part I am giving decoder name. So again, unit, it has two architectures. One is an encoder architecture, another one is a decoder architecture. So what encoder will do? It will somehow extract the features from the data, and it will convert that data in a latent vector. And again, I will take that latent vector and I will try to reconstruct the images. So if my, so this is the unit architecture. You connect the output of the discriminator directly into the generator. This would make an image autoencoder, and the discriminator becomes the encoder and the generator becomes the decoder. So this is how, if you will type unit on the internet, you will see this image. So just try to understand this part now carefully. So this is a encoder part, this is a decoder part. Again, I can say this is a, so there are two paths. One is a contracting path, another one is a expanding path. So what is the contracting path? So you are taking the image. In the contracting path, you are reducing the dimensions of the images. So as I have already mentioned you, convolution operation. You have here convolution operation. So you are applying here. So these are the down block. You have here down blocks. In this side, this is called as a, this path is called as a contraction path. Contraction path. So in this path, you have down blocks. So what is each down block? What is the structure of each down block? It is actually the convolution block. Convolution block. So what is there inside convolution block? You have convolution operation. You have batch normalization. Convolution operation, you have batch normalization. Then you have ReLU activation. And then you have max pooling. So this is what there inside this one down block. So this is convolution operation. So I can say that if you remember, after applying convolution operation, image dimensions would be reduced. Dimensions of the image would be reduced if padding will not be used, right? So somehow during the down block you are reducing the dimensions of the image. So here image is of 128 by 128 size, number of channels were 3 as it is a colored image. So you are reducing the dimension to 64 by 64. Then next convolution operation, you are reducing the dimensions to 32 by 32, and then you are converting it into the latent vector to capture the global properties or the global feature. So if you observe here, I am reducing the dimensions. So I am somehow spatial dimensions I am reducing. But if you observe here, initially I was having three feature maps, or I can say 3 channels. So after one convolution, I am having here 50 channels, I am having here 100 channels, I am having here 200 channels. So in this contraction path, what you are doing, you are trying to capture the features, diverse features from the image by increasing. So because these are the feature maps, right? So you are increasing the number of feature maps. So you are increasing, in short, the number of kernels. So what I can say now, you are decreasing the dimensions of your images, but you are increasing the number of feature maps or number of channels during the contracting path or during the down block of the unit architecture. Now here you have here upper block. So this is called as a block. You have here a block. Then you have here, this is called as an expansion path. Whatever dimensions you have reduced, reduced, now you have to go on expanding those dimensions. And then next part, so this is again here you are using the in the upper block. So what you are using, you are using here transpose convolution. This is important, transpose convolution. Because, and again here at initial level only, at first time only, so if you observe any DDPM architecture, at first time only once you are using the transpose convolution. Because here after latent vector you have reduced dimensions of the image, and now what you have to do, you have to increase the dimension. So somehow you are increasing the dimension, but later on what you will do here, so normal convolution operation you can make use, because later on again you have to capture the features. So for that purpose, initially you are using transpose convolution once, and later on you are using simple convolution. But just with the change in the filter size and padding, you are changing the dimensions. So you are increasing the dimensions of the images. Again, convolution operation. You are increase the dimension, you can decrease the dimension. But if you observe here, what about number of channels? Number of channels are getting decreased in the upper block. So in the down block, decreasing the image dimension, but increasing the number of channel. In the upper block, increasing the number of channel, number of dimensions, but decreasing the number of channel. Here, 200 channels were there. Again here, 100 channels, and again here, 50 channels. So can anyone tell me what is this part? Anyone from you? Can you tell me what can be this one? This is a down block, this is a this is a down block, again this is a up block. So you are taking something from the down block. So what you can say for this? Why I am taking some data from the down block? What I can call to this? Any answer from you? Yes, I am directly taking as an input from the previous layer here. Again I am taking the data from the last few layers from the previous path. So that is called as a residual connection. So if my neural network will, just a second. So here, if you go like this, so here you are taking the input. So I have, while teaching you CNN, I have explained you something called residual connections. So, so because of this deep architecture, too many convolution layer, there is a possibility of vanishing gradient or losing the information. So to avoid that, what we do, we create the residual connection. So whatever directed data from the down block, you are giving the data as a down copy to the upper block. So direct the data from the down block contracting path, and again you are taking some data from the current path. So this is called as a residual connection. Residual connection of your unit architecture. So now again the same thing. If I will give a noise image, I will add noise to the image directly, and I will make that model to give me the denoise image. So here, what if my model is able to denoise the image from this, from denoise, make this image, remove the noise from the image. If my this complete architecture is able to learn that denoising part, so then what I will do, I will provide the random noise. So what I will do, I will provide this noisy image. I have original image with me, I have noisy image with me. After this, what I will do, I will generate some denoise image, right? So that image, whatever image you are generating, how you will generate, because your loss function will be defined in that way. Whatever reconstructed image, you are matching that reconstructed image with the original dog image. So now you are trying to match these two images. So because of this, your model is learning the features of dog image at the back end. So it is completely removing the noise, only dog will be left in the image. So as your model will learn this thing, then what I will do, I will directly provide noisy image to this architecture, and that my model will give me, try to remove the noise in such a way that it will be only left with the dog in that noise. Complete noisy, and then it will be only left with the dog in that image. So this is how your unit architecture is. Initially it was developed in a medical domain for segmentation task, but here people are nowadays, by this concept, they are using unit architecture for generative purpose. So again here, the base for your diffusion model, is a unit architecture. Your DDPM architecture will be exactly similar to this. It is internally using up block and down block, but here the difference is, so now what we can do, so instead of adding noise, you are adding noise to the dog at once. So you are making this dog image completely noisy at a time, right? So what people have thought of, like instead of adding noise at a time, what I can do, step by step I will add the noise to the image, and during back propagation, what I will do, I will try to remove the noise step by step. So at this time, how much of noise is added, and I have denoise image. So whatever noise is predicted and whatever noise is added, so based on that, your architecture will be defined. And as you are adding step by step noise to the image, so during the denoising, it is correctly identifying the image structure and distribution, and by that way it is giving you the high quality images. So if you see here in unit, what is the difference between unit and DDPM? In unit architecture, you are adding noise while generating. We are only talking about the generative capability. So here in unit, instead of adding noise in this image at once, so what we will do, we will add noise step by step, and we will try to remove that noise step by step, and so that our model will learn this adding of noise and removing of noise. And then if I will give the fresh noise to the image, so it will remove noise step by step, and it will give me the high quality generated image of dog. So this is the idea of your DDPM architecture. So we will see that. So this is the basic about this unit architecture. As we have already seen, it has two paths. One is a contracting path, another one is a expanding path. So what is the main goal of this contracting path of unit architecture? It aims to decrease the spatial dimensions of the image while also capturing the relevant information about the image. The contracting path uses a combination of convolution and pooling layer. Again, it is a down block structure. So what is the purpose? It extract and capture the features within an image while at the same time reducing its spatial dimensions. So what about expanding path? It aims to upsample the feature map and produce a relevant segmentation map using the patterns learned in the contracting path. So it upsample the feature map. So upsample feature map means it increases the dimension. Upsampling, this is a downsampling, this is upsampling. So upsampling matlab you are increasing the this dimensions, upsampling the feature map. And here you are producing the segmentation map using the patterns in the contracting path. So this is how the code will look like. If you will see the code, you will see something called down block in any unit architecture. So in one down block, what we have different. So in one down block, you may have 3 convolution operation, you may have 4 convolution operation. So here in this down block, you have used 2 convolution operation. So what is convolution? You are taking the kernel and you are sliding it over the image. So that is why here you need to provide input channel, then how many output feature map you need, what is the kernel size, what is the stride, and what is the padding. So in that way convolution operation is defined. After convolution, you are defining batch normalization. So what is batch normalization? So we'll see that, because in the DDPM, people were using this batch normalization, but there is a problem with the batch normalization while generating the images. So that's why people have come up with this group normalization. There is a checkerboard problem. While generating the images, there is a checker, grid-like structure. Whenever you are generating the images, grid-like structure will appear there. And to avoid that grid-like structure, so we go with the group normalization. So channel-wise normalization. This is a batch-wise normalization. For single sample, channel-wise normalization we do in a group normalization. So here, simple unit architecture, we are using this batch normalization. Then we are making use of this ReLU activation function. So again, we are repeating this. So 2 convolution layers we have used here, followed by 1 max pooling operation. So this is how your down block structure will look like. And what is your up block structure? As I have mentioned you about this in the transpose convolution, right? In the up block at initial level, only at initial level you are using transpose convolution. Later on you are using simple convolution, because initially it will be able to give you the expanded image. Later on you need to again capture the features. So that's why you are using the simple convolution operations. Just a second. So this is how here down block is defined. Sorry, up block. You have here transpose convolution operation. So in the transpose convolution, what this 2 indicates? You are taking data from the skip connection. That is from down block side. So this is how here. Because of this down copy, you have here 400, 200 into 2, because you are taking here 200 channel as it is, and this current 200 channel. So that is why this 2 indicates. Then batch normalization you have. So you apply batch normalization on this output channel. Whatever output channels you are generating, you are batch wise. 300 images are there in one batch. So you are taking all these values of 300 batch samples, and you are applying, you are calculating mu and sigma, and accordingly you are normalizing your data. So batch wise normalization, that is a batch wise normalization. 120 images if you have in one batch, then you take all the channel values of that 120 images and you calculate the mu and sigma, and accordingly you normalize the data, and then you apply here ReLU activation function. So now we will quickly go through this transpose convolution operation. So the goal of the transpose convolution operation is to do the opposite of this convolution. So in convolution, we are reducing the dimension. In transpose convolution, we are increasing the dimension. We are upsampling the feature map to a desired larger output feature map. So here. Then transpose convolution goes through an iterative process by multiplying entries in the input. So it is the reverse one. Previously, we are taking the kernel and we are placing it over the input image. Now what we are doing, we are taking individual values of input and we are expanding that value over this kernel. Individual value, first value, put it over kernel. Second value, put it over kernel. So we are expanding. So this is how it is called as upsampling. So transpose convolution goes through an iterative process, multiplying entries in the, so what it will do? Multiplying entries in the input feature map by the filter, adding them up together. So we can just see this example, everyone. So here, this is a input, these are the input dimensions. So I have 2 by 2 size image and I am getting output as a 3 by 3 size image after transpose convolution. So I am upsampling the data, transpose convolution. So here what I will do, I will take this one value and I will place this one value here on this filter. So what output I will get? I will get this output. Then I will take this 2 value. I will again place this 2 value over this kernel. So what output I will get? 4 into 2, 8. 3 into 2, 6. Then 2 into 2, 4. And 2 into 1, 2. So like that I will place it here. Then I will take this third value. I will put it here. So now what I will do? I will take this 3 value. Then I will put it here. 3, 3. I am expanding input data over the kernel. So what answer I will get? 4 into 3, 12. Then 3 into 3, 9. 3 into 2, 6. 3 into 1, 3. Now I will take this second value, 4. I will put it here, 4, 4, 4 and 4. So accordingly, I will get this answer. Now what I will do, I will add all these 3 by 3 matrices together. And whatever output I will get, that is the answer of my transpose convolution. Transpose convolution answer. So yeah, you were having 2 by 2 size image and here you are getting output as a 3 by 3 image upsampled feature map. You can call it as a upsampled feature map. After convolution, downsampled. After convolution, you are reducing because you are not using padding and your center of pixel will be the attraction at target pixel will be the your kernel center pixel should be kept over the center of interest of pixel of your interest, and accordingly you will be getting the convolution operation downsampled feature map. Downsampled feature map you will get after simple convolution operation. Downsampled means dimensions will be less without padding. We are talking about without padding, no padding. So if you will add padding, then there is a possibility of input size will match with the output size. So here, so whatever, if I want to get the dimension, as we have seen in the CNN architecture, I have explained you that formula. If you remember, W minus F plus 2P by S plus 1. So this is by this formula you get whatever your dimensions are there, input dimensions are there. By if you apply this formula, you will get output dimension size of feature map after applying convolution operation. So exactly similar, if you have input dimensions x and x as an input dimension 2 by 2. So in that way, so is the size of input feature map. So if you use this formula, you will be able to get this dimension 3 by 3. So here 2 minus 1 into stride is given as a continuous stride 1 plus kernel size is a 2 minus padding is a 0. So if you put it here, you will get answer as a 3. Answer as a 3. So here in that way, you will get this kernel size is a 3 minus 0. That way 2 plus 1 here. This will be 2 plus 1, right? 2. This is a 2 minus 1 into 1. This is a 2 minus 2 into 0. No mention about this padding. So this 2 plus this 1. So you will get 3 by 3 as a answer. So X is a input dimension, stride here, no stride mention, continuous sliding is there. Kernel size is 2 by 2 kernel, you have taken this kernel size. And then padding, no mention about the padding. So this padding is for input data. So whenever you have here input feature, if I thought of using this 0 padding here, so this is called as that padding, input data. And what about output padding? Suppose I have generated this image and maybe there is a possibility that I have generated 10 by 10 size image or 11 by 11 size image. So I don't want to consider all 11 by 11 columns and rows. So what I have decided to reduce this dimension. I only consider 9 by 9 image. So that is decided based on this output padding, how much data to be considered. So that denotes the out padding. So here in transpose convolution, padding refers to the padding of the input in the forward pass. As I have mentioned, input to the forward pass. and then input in the forward pass of the original standard convolution, and up convolution the padding is used affect the cropping of the output. What is output padding? Output padding is to fine tune the output shape. So instead of output page, instead of 11 by 11, I want to use 9 by 9 to match the specific size. So it does not introduces zeros before the convolution, but adds to the final output dimensions. So if I want to consider it as a 15 by 15, then I will add the that dimension, the zeros to this. So this is how you are doing the transpose convolution. So exactly similar. So this is the input dimension. These are the output dimension. So here stride 2 has been used. So that's why output you have got as a 4 by 4 size. If you put it in the previous formula, so 1, you are placing 1 over this complete image. Accordingly, you will put it here. Then 2, then here separately, then next to 2, then here separately. So whenever there is a overlapping, if you see here this value, this 1, again this 4, this 9, and this 16. So this is overlapping. So what you will do? 1 plus 4 plus 9 plus 16. So that would be 30. So this is overlapping, but here if you see, there may be less overlapping in this transpose convolution. So this is how the architecture of transpose convolution will look like. So if you see same image. So what are the key takeaways from? So unit architecture is an architecture so that consists of total 23 layers using a combination of convolution, up convolution, pooling and skip connection. So the unit is able to extract and capture complex features while keeping and reconstructing the spatial information. So this allows for the localization of features in an image and thus producing accurate segmentation maps. So basically main purpose of this unit architecture, it was used mainly for the creation of segmentation maps. So this is especially useful in the medical image. The first paper that was developed for unit was based on this medical image analysis for segmentation, where the accurately locating and detecting the abnormality from the image. So now, as I have mentioned you about this unit architecture, as we are adding noise at a time in the unit architecture. So now we will move to the DDPM. Now we will learn the DDPM. So to separate the noise from the image using unit, right? As I have mentioned, you are taking the image data, you are adding noise to this data at a once, and then you train the model, deep learning model, whatever downsampling and upsampling. So you train this model to denoise this. You reconstruct image. Whatever reconstructed image you are matching with the original one. So your model will adjust the parameters to reconstruct the original images. And so it is actually removing the noise from the image. So instead of adding noise at once, people have thought of adding noise step by step, so that my neural network will properly learn to remove the small amount of noise each time. So this is the idea behind this DDPM and difference between this unit and DDPM. So to separate the noise from an image using unit, but it was not capable of generating believable new images from the noise. So that is the problem, because we are adding noise at once. So diffusion models are much better at generating the images from scratch. So rather than adding noise to your images all at once, we will be adding a small amount of noise multiple times until your image will become completely noisy. So what is your goal? You have here dog image, somewhere dog is there. So what you will do? You will add noise first, then again in that you will add small amount of noise, again small amount of noise, till when? Till this completely becomes the noisy image. So we will be adding small amount of noise multiple times till that image becomes completely noisy image, and then we start removing that noise, small amount of noise from here, from here, like that till we get this dog image. So we can then use our neural network on noisy image multiple times to generate the new image. Once your model has learned this, then if I will give you normal image, then my model will remove that noise and it will give me the generated image, or it will be left with the original image. Then, so if you see here, diffusion models are new class of state-of-art generative model that generate the diverse high resolution images. They have already attracted a lot of attention because of this NVIDIA, Google, and OpenAI managed to train the large model. So if you see this Glide, DALL-E 2, Imagen, so all these are the models based on the diffusion model. So the idea, whatever diffusion model idea, that idea has come from this paper, deep unsupervised learning using non-equilibrium thermodynamics. The idea has taken from this thermodynamics paper. So what was the idea? So if you see, if you the drop of food color into this glass of water, so what will it will go on dissolving until that water will become completely green colored, or that it will take that color of the food. So here some the swirling patterns and the turbulence visually present diffusion. So you are diffusing the some color into this particular particles into this glass of water. So how particles or noise spread out over a time and eventually mix uniformly until that completely become the colorful water. So this is common physical analogy used to explain the spread of noise in an image generation diffusion models, or the concept of randomness mixing into the structured data. So you have normal water and you are making it to the randomly, you are adding the noise step by step and making it completely unstructured data. So this paper was introduced the theoretical foundation for diffusion probabilistic model, where the idea is to iteratively add noise to the data and then train your neural network to reverse the process and reconstruct the clean samples. So this is how it looks like after T25, then 75, 150 steps. So as I have mentioned, this denoising diffusion model, probabilistic model, so are fundamentally different from other previous generative methods. They aim to decompose the image generation process, sampling in a many small denoising. So previously we were having that decoder. So instead of decoder, you have here reverse diffusion process. So you have here two steps. One is a forward diffusion, another one is a reverse diffusion process. So step where it goes, so forward diffusion, what we have, we take the, again we do not add the random noise, we take the Gaussian noise and we add it in a image. So it is added systematically until the data becomes completely noisy. And what about reconstruction step, where we denoise the data by learning the conditional probability densities using the neural network. So this is how your forward diffusion process will look like. So given a data point x0, so that is a sample from the real-time distribution. So what we do, one can define a forward diffusion process by adding noise specifically at each time step. So you are taking this image, x0 time step, x0 image you have taken. In that image you have added a small amount of noise, then you have got this image. Then again small amount of noise xt. So till when you will get that completely noisy image. So specifically at each time step of the Markov chain, we add Gaussian noise with the variance beta t. So this called this in term of this diffusion process, it is called as a schedule, variance schedule. So how much noise you are adding? So beta is a variance schedule. So xt to the xt minus 1. So you are adding noise to the beta t noise to the xt minus 1 image to get the xt image. So producing a new latent variable xt with the distribution, this one. So this diffusion process can be formulated. So you have here xt minus 1 image. Again, if you see here, it is in a probabilistic form distribution. So these are the parameters of that distribution. Whatever data is there, so you are taking the image and you are doing some multiplication with 1 minus beta t. That means you are taking the image and you are adding noise to that image, and then in that way you have here mu and sigma defined. So that is how your distribution of this data, then distribution of this data. So how you will get that? By this formula. So here I is the identity matrix. What is this beta t? Beta t is the variance schedule. how much noise you are adding. So I is the identity matrix indicating that each dimension has the same standard deviation beta t. So it is a normal distribution defined by the mu and variance. So again, so that paper, Google Brain team, that paper they published for diffusion model. So what they did, they have taken these values for adding noise beta t. So what they have decided at initial level you add small amount of noise here, but later on what you can do, you can add more noise because here too many features are there. So there is a learning involved at initial steps, but as completely images become noisy, so you don't need to learn the noise patterns, right? So what you can do, you can make the image completely noisy. So later on you add, initially you will this is called as a variance schedule. So whatever beta is there, this is called as a variance schedule. So what it is to a popular variance schedule is to start with the small amount of noise at the beginning, so the model can better generate detail, and then add larger amount of noise for later purpose. So here, so again, there is a thing in diffusion model that is called as a convenient shorthand use, that is a alpha parameter is used instead of 1 minus beta, sorry, instead of beta parameter people are using alpha parameter. So I will tell you that part as well. So this is a forward diffusion process. So whatever your unit architecture was, so what you are doing in this down copy, so at you are adding something related to time, right? Because at particular time you are adding some noise, so that is why that time information you are adding in this diffusion. So this is the only change, time information you are adding, rest of the things remain same, and step by step you are adding the data. So if you see here, this is a forward diffusion process. This is the formula to get the distribution of at any point of time. So this is your previous step image, xt minus 1, you are adding this much of noise and you will getting xt image. So you are taking xt minus 1 image, adding noise, and you are getting xt minus xt plus 1, that is xt image. So these are the steps. First steps, generate the noise. Again you are adding beta t schedule, so you are taking that from the normal distribution. So then you multiply result by beta t. So multiply image at previous step by 1 minus beta t, add it to the results from step 1. So you take the beta t, you take this identity matrix, and you take the xt minus 1 previous image, you take square root of and do the add, and accordingly you create the image. So here again there is a reparameterization trick used. So there is a possibility that I want to get this x5 image based on x0 image, right? Because here what we are doing actually, step by step we are adding noise, and then we are getting till now what we have seen, we are taking x4 image and you are adding noise to x4 and you are getting x5 image. But my question now, I have to get the x5 image based if x0 image is given to me, and the concept should remain same, I need to add the noise step by step. So for that purpose we have made something called reparameterization trick. So instead of beta t, what we have done, we have made use of, so this is again given in that paper. So instead of beta t, we have taken alpha t parameter. So what is the alpha? It is a 1 minus beta. And again, we are considering something called here alpha bar. So what is this alpha bar? Alpha bar is a, so if I have alpha 5 bar, so what does it indicate? It is a cumulative product. You may be aware about this formula, alpha 1 into alpha 2 into alpha 3 till alpha 5. So this is what it indicates, alpha 5 bar I want to get. So what I will do, I will take alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3. What is alpha? Alpha is a 1 minus beta. Alpha t is a 1 minus beta t. So alpha 1 is a 1, alpha 1 is a 1 minus beta 1, alpha 2 is a 1 minus beta 2, alpha 3 is a 1 minus beta 3. And if I want to get alpha bar, so my concern is this alpha bar. Now in the diffusion process, alpha bar, instead of working with the beta parameter, I will be working with the alpha bar parameter. What is alpha bar? It is a cumulative product of all alphas till that time step. So that formula, if you go through this, this is the formula that xt minus 1 instead of 1 minus beta t. If you remember, this is a 1 minus beta t. In minus 1 minus beta t, we are using alpha t. And then you are taking this. So if you go on expanding this formula, instead of xt minus 1, you are making xt minus 2, and then xt minus 3, like that. If you will go on expanding this, then you will get this as a final answer. So if I want to get xt image, so I am taking here cumulative product till t point of all alphas, and I am taking x0 image. So xt minus 1 go. What you will do, again put it as a xt minus 2. Then put here xt minus 1 here in this image, xt minus 1. So like that, if we will go on expanding this till x0. So if you want to get x5 image based on x0 image, so what you are doing here, it is a multiplication of different alpha values till that point, and this is how the formula is now rephrased like this. This is your actual formula. If I want to get x5 image based on x0, so you are taking alpha bar cumulative product, making square root of, previously it was square root of 1 minus beta, and here it was xt minus 1. So instead of xt minus 1, I am taking x0 image, and accordingly you are able to generate the xt image. But here the noise is added in that way, x alpha 1 bar, alpha 2 bar, like that. So this is how the code for your forward diffusion may look like. So this is a PyTorch code. So 1 minus beta, beta is already defined as this one, values of beta 0.01. In that way, all are defined these values. And then you are taking a as a 1 minus alpha as a 1 minus beta, then a bar as a cumulative product of that. Then you are taking the square root and then square root of 1 minus alpha. So accordingly, this formula is actually the forward diffusion process. So you are taking the noise, then random noise, and then square root a bar of this 1 minus a bar, and this formula. If you see here, this is only that formula, this formula. So what is the output of your forward diffusion process? You are taking original image and time step. And what you are returning from this? You are returning x5 image and what amount of noise you have added. So at 5 time step, what noise I have added and what would be the image after adding that much of noise. So that is what you are returning from the forward diffusion process. So this is the simple training algorithm of forward diffusion. If you see, so actually the beauty of this DDPM architecture lies in the loss function. It has very easiest loss function. So what is the loss function here? You are predicting noise at a time step, and whatever noise you have added. So at 5th time step, I have added X amount of noise, and whatever my model is predicting at that time step. So the difference between them is the loss function. So here, this is the loss function. So you are taking the image, then so here, then uniform distribution, you are taking the t value, and then like that you are here. We take the sample from our data set, we generate the random number between 1 and t. So these many time steps, actually we are talking about time steps, 100 time steps. I'm going on adding the noise, then you are generating the sample noise. So whatever noise you have added, and this is how after applying this forward diffusion you are predicting. So this is a predicted noise by your model. So this is the actual noise you have added, and this is a predicted noise you have predicted by your model. So we add noise to our image and we train the model to learn to predict the amount of noise present in it. So we are making our model to learn the that amount of noise what is added. So that is a prediction. So based on that, you are making your model to learn. So this is how the down block structure, as we have already seen. This is the up block structure of your model. Same 2 into channels, same. This would be the same one. Only change is there in the Q function and reverse diffusion process. Forward diffusion, Q and reverse Q. This was the Q function. You have in your model, you have this Q function, and you have here reverse Q function. So what is the reverse Q function? What is the reverse diffusion? So you are taking the image, and what you are doing from that image, you are trying to remove the noise. So here you are taking X10 image, right? You are taking X10 image and you are removing something from that X10 image, and you are returning X9 image. So you are getting here X9 image. Then again X9 image, you are removing something and you are taking, giving X8 image. So this is how your function will look like. So this is difficult to calculate this parameter. So what we do, we are taking this formula. So if you see here, this is the main formula for reverse diffusion process. So here 1 minus alpha bar t minus 1 beta t. So here you start from the noisy sample. So what is the reverse diffusion process? You start from the noisy sample. You begin with the noisy version of your data. Then at some time step, this xt would have come from repeatedly adding the noise at each earlier time step, right? Because of forward diffusion. So it is a noisy sample at a time, at a particular time step. So what you are taking, you are taking the noisy sample and you are subtracting something from that sample, right? You are taking the noise, this sample, and you are trying to remove from here something, and then you will get this sample. So this is what that formula will look like. So here again it is a completely probability thing, not the actual xy value. It is a parameter of that distribution. So parameter of this distribution you are getting, not the actual sample. So here you are taking the xt image, and what you are doing, you are trying to subtract something. So what you are trying to subtract, a trained neural network alpha 0 xt is used to estimate the noise component alpha t. So the noise added at times t, this is what the neural network will estimate. So this is the noise added, predicted noise I can say, and then you will multiply it with the alpha 1 minus square root of 1 minus alpha. So in that way you will get the this original just before time step sample, if we subtract some amount of noise from that image. So this is how your reverse diffusion process will look like. So at each time step we can estimate the average image should look like. Our neural network is trained to recognize the added noise. So what is our main motto of our model? So it has to predict the noise, so predicted noise and actual noise. So based on that your network would be trained, so present at each time step. By predicting this noise using our predefined alpha values, we can reconstruct what the image at the previous time step would be. So starting from the pure noise. So once your neural network is learned, whatever noise added, whatever noise predicted. So if your model is able to predict that noise, so then what you will do, you can remove that predicted noise from the image. So starting from pure noise, we repeat this process, gradually refining the images until we generate the realistic unseen sample. So you take the pure noise now, and we repeat this process, diffusion process, reverse diffusion process. So we repeat reverse diffusion process. What reverse diffusion process will do, it will predict the noise at time step, it will remove that noise, again it will predict that noise, it will remove that noise. So like that it will go on removing the noise from the noisy sample till you are left with the sample which is unseen or generated sample. So this is how your reverse diffusion process will look like. So this formula, only you are writing this formula in this. And what you are returning? You are returning this parameter mu t plus this one, torch of square root of bt into noise. So this is how we have finished the diffusion process. Now quickly what we can do, I will quickly take you all through the optimization of this diffusion, because there is a problem. Whatever basic ddpm architecture that was developed, like convolution, up convolution block, adding noise step by step, so in that model there is a problem of checkerboard problem. So what is that checkerboard problem and how we can avoid? So that is what called as a optimization problem, optimization of your ddpm architecture. So this is how, so if you try to generate the images, the previously in CAN there was a problem of mode collapse. So it is frequently generating a single category image. So instead of that was the mode collapse problem. But to avoid that problem, we have come up with this DDPM architecture. But again, in the DDPM architecture, because of that max pooling, then batch normalization, and then properly not performing the transpose convolution operation, there is a problem called checkerboard problem. So if you have experienced with the diffusion model, so there is a possibility that you may get these kind of images. So if you see here grid like structure, you will be able to see here simple grid structure. So you might have noticed that some generated images exhibit a grid like pattern. So this is known as a checkerboard problem, a common issue in the model that use a transpose convolution. So this has been happened because of transpose convolution, not properly setting the kernel size and image size, input image. So in DDPM, so this problem in denoising diffusion probabilistic model typically refers to the appearance of unnatural checkerboard problem in the synthesized or generated images during the generation or reconstruction process. So here you are not able to identify. If you see only box you can see, you are not able to identify whether it is a shoe image or shirt image. So because of this checkerboard problem. So why this is happening? Because of overlapping kernel. So when the kernel size is larger than the stride and the same pixel value is reused. Suppose that you have a kernel size of 4 and you have a stride size of 2. So with this setting, each time the kernel slides over the feature map during the upsampling. So neighboring output pixel get contribution from overlapping. So there is a possibility of overlapping, as we have seen. Because of repeatedly we are taking the central pixel value is calculated 4 times and then we are clubbing that data together, right? So because that is why it is happening. So neighboring output pixel get contribution from overlapping. So because of overlapping phenomena that has been happened during the transpose convolution. So this means a single input pixel will influence multiple partially overlapping areas of the output. And again, learning difficulties. So even if the kernel and stride do not overlap, the model may struggle to distribute pixel values evenly. So again, that will again lead to the this grid kind of artifacts. So this artifact degrade the image quality. Again, you cannot identify whether it is a shoes or shirt image because of that checkerboard. And so making outputs look artificially stitched together. Let's explore. So how we can now optimize this? So my question is how we can remove this checkerboard problem in the DDPM architecture. So there are different techniques of removing this. So instead of group batch normalization, you can make use of group normalization. Then instead of ReLU activation function, as we have seen, people have used ReLU activation function. So instead of ReLU activation function, we can make use of GALU activation function, that is a Gaussian error linear unit. Now, then we have already seen there is a max pooling concept, right? So as I have mentioned, max pooling, you are forwarding maximum value. From this block, you are for whatever maximum value is there, that value you are carry forwarding. So instead of max pooling, people have come up with this rearrange pooling. We will see that. And then again, there is a sinusoidal positional embedding as we are adding noise time wise. So again, instead of having 12 hour like 24 hour that clock sequence, 12-hour sequence, so what we can have, we can make use of cosine sine cosine formula. So we may get different kinds of time embeddings here because of this possible, and we can make use of deeper network. So these are the optimization techniques that are used basically in case of this DDPM architecture diffusion model. So here now we will understand what is group normalization. So group normalization divides the feature map. So what group normalization? Whenever you have convolution operation, right? So after convolution operation, I have used 64 kernels of 3 by 3 size. So what you will get now? You will get some images, and that 64 images you will get, right? Maybe each image is of 32 by 32 size. 32 by 32 size. Like that, you will get 64 images. So what you will do now? So for one sample. So in case of batch normalization, unlike batch normalization, so what batch normalization will do? There is a batch of images. In this there are 28 images. So what batch normalization will do, it will consider all 28 images, it will consider all channels of the 28 images, and it will calculate for every channel, it will calculate this mu and sigma value by considering all channels for all these 28 images, and then it will normalize that data. So instead of considering all 28 images, so what we will do in group normalization, I will take single sample and I will consider all feature maps that are generated with the convolution operation. So here 64 channels are generated. So instead of using 64 channel, what I will do, I will calculate the mu and sigma for 8 channels, like 8 times. So I will group that 64 channel in a group of 8. Then I will take values of for one sample. We are talking about one sample. Here we are considering all 28 sample for channel. But here we are considering only single sample and channels. Sample, and for that single sample, how many channels are there? You are grouping those channels and then you are calculating the mu and sigma across that 8 channels. Here there will be mu and sigma. Here there will be mu and sigma. And then you are normalizing that channel wise, group wise. So this is how group normalization will work. So group size, the number of channels in each group determines the normalization behavior. So here, so what was the batch normalization? Unlike batch normalization, which normalizes across the batch dimension, group normalization operates over per sample basis. एक sample, you are taking one sample and then making it more effective over a small batch size. So here for small batch size, if there is a batch size, suppose here only batch is of 8 size, so maybe there is a possibility that batch normalization will not perform well. So in that scenario, you can make use of this group normalization. So making it, as we are working with the per sample basis, it makes us more effective for small batches. So group size, the number of channels in each group determines the normalization behavior. And if the group size equals the total number of channels, group normalization becomes layer normalization. So now we will see this diagram. So if you see, this is a batch. You are considering single channel for all 28 images in one batch, and you calculate the mu and sigma, and accordingly you normalize. Now what you do in layer normalization, group normalization. So in layer normalization, you focus on single sample. You consider all channels in a layer normalization. You take all channel values, then you calculate mu and sigma, and then you normalize the data. So instead of this, what you will do, you will divide that complete channels in a group. So if you have 64 channels, so in layer normalization, you will consider all 64 channels. But in group normalization, I will divide channels in a size of group size of 8. So 8 channels I will consider. So this is how group normalization will work. So what is the advantage of it? It is less dependent on batch size. It works well even for small batches. So it prevents the instability and it avoids issues like batch dependent fluctuation. So it reduces the artifacts, that is a checkerboard problem. So for small batches also it will perform well. So this is the slide that will give the comparison. So suppose I have 300 images, dataset of 300 images. So I have made a 5 batches. Each batch consists of 60 images. Now I have image size of this size 64, 225 by 225 by 64. So I have 64 channels. So last dimension is a channel, number of channel. So what you will do, batch normalization activations across the batch dimension. So this means it computes the mean and variance across all 60 sample. It considers the batch and calculate the mu and variance. So this works well when batch size is large, but for small batches it may introduce instability. But for small batches, what you can go with this group normalization. So it does not use batch dimension. What it does, it takes the single sample, it divides 64 channels for that sample in 8 groups of 8 channels. Within each group, it computes the mean and variance, and normalization is applied independently to each group. So for every group, there will be different mu and sigma, and accordingly normalization will happen. So this is a group normalization concept. Then next one is a Galois activation function optimization technique. What is Galois activation function? So Galois activation function is a instead of ignoring negative sample, right? In case of ReLU activation function, you are directly ignoring the negative samples, this red color. Whenever there is a negative sample, you are directly making it as a 0. So instead of it cause the dying neuron problem. So to avoid that, what we do, we consider some negative value. So that is what ReLU activation function. So this is how that convolution block would be changed. You have convolution operation instead of batch normalization. Previously, we were having here batch normalization. Instead of batch normalization, you are providing batch normalization. Previously, you are applying on output channel, but here group normalization, you are performing on output channel, but you are specifying here group size. The next one is a rearrange pooling. So here if you see, this was a max pooling, right? So you are dividing your 4x4 image directly to the reducing it to directly half. How? By using 2x2 filter. So from here maximum value, from here maximum value, from here maximum and maximum value. So this is how there is a possibility that we may lose some information because of this. So what happened here, instead of using this rearrange pooling, instead of using this max pooling, people have come up with the rearrange pooling. So that is given in a INOP library. So that is why rearrange pooling with the INOP. So what this INOP is doing, if you see here, this is an image. This is an image. So what you do, you divide that image this column wise. So this one. You are, and then what you will do, then you are dividing this image then row wise. So if you see here 1 5 9, so first column, then second column, third column, again what you will do, you are again dividing it in a column wise. So 5 will go here row wise, then this one. So what you are doing actually here in this, instead of you are actually reducing the dimension, but you are not ignoring any data. So what you are doing, you are reducing 4x4 image to 2x2, but at the same time you are increasing the channel. So every data you are keeping it at back. So this is how you are reducing the dimension, but you are not losing the data. So you are putting that data in a different channel backside, then different channel. So how you are doing that? So you are taking data in column wise and row wise fashion. So in this case, we are requesting every other column get cut into strips and stack along the channel dimension. Then cut every other row and stack those along the channel dimension. So this is how you can see. I have considered 1 3. So I have considered 1 3 9 11. That would be my first feature channel. Then the second channel you may have here 2 4 10 12. Then third dimension will be 5 7 13 15, and the next channel will be, fourth channel will be 6 8 14 16. So actually here you are reducing the dimension of the image. That again it is fulfilling that criteria, dimensionality reduction. Main purpose of pooling is a dimensionality reduction. So you are reducing the dimension, but you are not losing the data. You are keeping the data in the form of channels. Those are stacked one after one over another. So this is how rearrange pooling is performed. Now next part is a, so this is how it can be implemented. So it is saying that divide height by cut the height, then cut the width, and then put it in a channel wise. C P1 P2. So this is how this rearrange pooling will work. So what is the purpose of this? It it preserves the spatial information better than the traditional pooling. So returns more details and reduces the artifacts. So this is how it can be considered here. So if you see here, observe here 1 3 5. So here you are seeing 1, then 3, then 5, then 13, 15, 17. So like that you are taking here 4 channels. So you are reducing it to half, but you are taking data in a number of channels. Again, as I have mentioned, different time steps are there. For those time steps, you are considering some cosine formula. That is a sinusoidal positional embedding. And then last part is a deeper network. So this is how now we can stop here. So we have seen already this basic idea about unit architecture, then diffusion model, and then we have seen optimization technique that are used in the diffusion model. So if you have any doubt, then let me know. So what I will do, I will, as I already shared my email ID. And my contact number. So if you have any doubt, please let me know.
What will be a detailed course to read about this generative model? Any good references
So
that you
there
can?
is, sir, for a diffusion model, so what you can do, sir, there is a deep learning.ai. So the people, those who have come up with this Crew AI, then Andrew Ng, all those all those faculties or senior people, so they are putting their courses on that. So you can refer
Okay.
that platform, deeplearning.ai. So you may find there this DDPM as well.
Sure, sure. I felt this is a
Okay.
heavy subject to be covered in 2 hours. Thanks for explaining it in
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
detail.
Yes, thank you. It's the bit advanced concept.
Yes.
Yes. So, any other question you would like to ask? So, basically, you can remember unit architecture and then convolution block. So, this recap is like you just remember the down sampling path and up sampling path. And from that, so simple, if you see here, this is a simple code for that transform. So, here you can see here adding noise. Then next one, the sinusoidal positional embedding. So like that, you can just define different blocks. And the main part is you can focus on that, this one, optimization technique. So down block and up block. That is the main part I feel you need to remember while doing this diffusion model. Okay, fine. So again, if you have any doubt or any queries, then please let me know. Again, I will put my email ID. Skip connection. Okay. Oh, fine. So here you can directly type DDPM. So it is available in the archive, directly DDPM. This was Jonathan, some author is there. So it was published by Google Brain Team. There is one Indian author as well, I guess, in that DDPM. So I will share that paper as well. So that paper will be uploaded in that drive folder, which is already shared with you. Okay, so if you face any difficulty, I am again writing my email ID here. So you can reach out to me. Okay, fine. Then we can stop now. Yeah, this one. Yeah, same paper. Denoising diffusion model. Again, in this, you can again explore context-free diffusion guidance. Sorry, classifier free diffusion guidance. You can explore this part as well. CFDG. Again, there is a one paper. Instead of using external classifier, so that means whatever DDPM is doing, it is generating the images for any classes. So suppose my requirement is I need to generate images of only dog class. So to do that, you may need to use the external classifier, CNN classifier, during the generation process. So instead of using CNN classifier, what we can do, we can rewrite or rephrase our reverse diffusion process, so that it will generate images of a particular class. So that is a classifier free. Instead of using external classifier, we are changing our reverse diffusion process. So you can explore that part as well. CFDG, classifier free diffusion guidance. Okay, fine then. I will end the meeting and I will share the resources for this, whatever covered. Okay, fine.
So thanks, madam.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.